Now, the next type of graph we're going to focus on graphing is known as a frequency polygon. And a frequency polygon is a graph that displays the data by using lines that connect the points plotted for the frequency at the midpoints. Let's highlight that. At the midpoints of the classes. The frequencies are represented by the heights of the points. You're going to need to know how to find the midpoint when it comes to chapter 11.3 as well. So this is important to understanding how to find the mean of a grouped frequency distribution. Thus, the reason why I didn't do it on November 17th class. Now, here is a more detailed example of how to graph it. A frequency polygon is a graph that shows the shape of a distribution and uses the midpoints for each class for the x-axis and the frequency for the y-axis. A dot will be placed at the midpoint and the height of the frequency of the class. Before you connect the dots, use the width of the frequency distribution and find one midpoint less than the lowest midpoint and one midpoint more than the highest midpoint. Those values will be the starting and ending values for the frequency polygon. Those dots are placed on the x-axis. Finally, connect all the points. Construct a frequency polygon using the frequency distribution from question number 7. Now, if we go back to question number 7, right, I'm going to quickly sketch the frequency distribution here. All right. So, it says we have to find the midpoint of each class. How do we find the midpoint of each class? Well, there is a formula which makes it easy to find the midpoint of each class. We call the midpoint x subscript m, x of m, xm. And to find the midpoint, it is going to be the lower class limit, the lower limit of the class, plus the upper limit of a class. Put the plus sign here. Upper limit divided by 2. Basically, the midpoint is the middle value that is in each class. So let's create another column on our frequency distribution. And we're going to call that column midpoint. And like I said, this is essential for when it comes to finding the mean of a grouped frequency distribution. Now, let's find the midpoints of each of those classes. To find the first midpoint, we're going to take the lower limit of the first class, which is 75, plus the upper limit of the first class, which is 78, and then you're going to divide it by 2. 75 plus 78 is 153. 153 divided by 2 is 76.5. That is the middle value of that class. Do the same thing for the second class. The lower limit of the second class, which is 79, plus the upper limit of the second class, which is 82, and then you're dividing that by 2. And the reason why we're finding the midpoint is to create the frequency polygon, which says that, hey, you need to find the midpoint. That is going to be 161. 161 divided by 2 is 80.5. We'll find the next one. After that, I want to show you the pattern with the midpoints. So that's going to be 83 plus 86 divided by 2. 83 plus 86 is 169. 169 divided by 2 is 84.5. If you look at the midpoints, each midpoint is increasing by 4. 76.5 plus 4 is 80.5. Plus 4 again, 84.5. Put that on that side. Why is it increasing by 4? Well, going back to question number 7. The width of the class was 4. So when I went to find the next value, the next limit, I added 4 each time to the lower limits and to the upper limits. The midpoint also follows the same rule. It will increase by the width, which is 4. Oops, too far down. So that means if we add 4 to 84.5, that is going to give us 88.5. Because 84.5 plus the class width of 4 is 88.5. Or you can use the midpoint formula just to find the next one. Right. Let's start drawing our graph. So make sure you have this down. I'm going to scoot over to the right. Now remember, the x-axis is going to be the midpoints. And the y-axis is the frequency. So the first midpoint that I have is 76.5, 80.5, 84.5, 88.5. Let me see, we'll put that up to 6. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Okay. Now, before I continue, I'm going to go back to the directions. And I'm going to highlight this piece right here. Let me see, can I find it? Before you connect the dots, use the width of the frequency distribution and find one midpoint less than the lowest midpoint and one midpoint more than the highest midpoint. Those values will be the starting and ending values for the frequency polygon. Those dots will be placed on the x-axis. Okay. So let's go here to our x-axis. It says we need to find one midpoint that is lower than the lowest midpoint, so I'll put it right there, and one midpoint that is higher than the largest midpoint of the frequency distribution. And we want to use the class width to find that value. Now remember, the class width is 4. Every time I wanted to find the next midpoint, I added 4. So if I'm at 76.5 and I want to find one midpoint below that, I'm just going to subtract 4. 76.5 minus 4 is 72.5. And we're going to place that dot right on the x-axis because that is our starting value. And then to find this value, we're just going to add 4 to 88.5, which gives us 92.5. And that's going to be the ending value, the ending of our frequency polygon. For the midpoint with 76.5, the frequency was 4. So that's going to be right here. And the same thing for the midpoint of 80.5. That frequency was 4. All right. You know, these dots get on my nerves. Now, for 84.5, the frequency was 5. So 84.5, that's going to be 5. Did I get that correctly? Yes, I did. And then for the last class, 88.5, the frequency was 3. Connect your dots. And that is how you construct a frequency polygon. All right, guys, that is it to frequency polygon. Hope that made sense. Hope you enjoyed the video. I'll see you soon. Take care.